Here in my home studio, there are lots of different things I can record. I've got acoustic, electric guitar, bass guitar, drum set, and vocals. Pretty standard. But there's some instruments I just don't have access to or don't know how to play them myself. So if I wanted to record brass or string instruments or woodwinds, I would have to use what's called virtual instruments. Presonus Studio One comes with two virtual instruments I highly recommend. The first one is Presence, the other one is Impact Drums. The Presence virtual instrument is basically like a synthesizer built into your computer that has all these different sounds you can use, like brass and strings and choirs and things like that. Impact Drums, I'll make a future video on that where it's basically got a bunch of different drum samples that you can add to your song as well. Today's video is all about Presence from Presonus Studio One. I'm gonna show you how to record a song from scratch. I'll try to keep it as real time as possible and very beginner friendly. I'm only gonna be using my keyboard and my mouse. I'm not gonna be plugging in any Midi instruments so that you can see how you can get up and running with Presence in Presonus Studio One. The idea for this video actually came from one of your comments here on YouTube. So my comment section, I try to stay as active as possible to respond as many as I possibly can. So if you have questions about Presonus Studio One or anything that's happening in this video, drop it in the comment section. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons. That goes a long way to support the channel. And like I said, there are links in the description of this video, like my Amazon store where you can see all the items that I have in my home studio. You can also go to my website and sign up for the newsletter so that you won't miss out on any of the videos. And it'll kind of give us a way of breaking across the different social media platforms. I'm glad you tuned in for this video. Now let's jump into Presonus Studio One and get recording with Presence. So before I create a new session in Presonus Studio One, to make sure you have Presence and Impact Drums already downloaded, go to the Studio One tab, click on Studio One Installations, navigate over to where it says Installed Content, and you should see Artist Instrument Library and Impact Drum Kits. Make sure those both have been downloaded and installed. You can go to the Available Downloads tab, and if you haven't downloaded it, it's probably already in the Available Downloads tab. If you do the recommended installation for Presonus Studio One, it should have downloaded these already, but just make sure that they are installed before you start a new session. Now that I've got everything installed, I can create a new song, and I'm gonna call this one Sweet Tea because I like to drink sweet tea. I'm gonna keep it at 48 kilohertz. I'm just gonna click OK. Now I've got a brand new session in Presonus Studio One. Couple of things. I'm gonna not record any vocals or live instruments for the song. I want it to be completely built on Presence. So I'm gonna go on the Browse tab here. Make sure you got the Browse tab open, and at the top, you can either click here where it says Instruments or click the Instruments tab. Go down to where it says Presonus, open up the folder, and you want to scroll down till you see Presence, okay? Presence should look just like this, and Studio One makes it very easy for you to just click and drag it open, and it should create a new instrument for Presence, a new instance of Presence, and it created a new track. So the first thing I need to decide is what kind of sound do I want to have. At the top of Presence, where it says Default, you can click this drop-down menu, and here you'll find all the different instruments or sounds that are loaded into Presence. Just to keep it easy, I'm going to keep everything I'm doing from the artist instruments. That way, if you're running the artist version of Presonus Studio One, you should have access to these presets already. Of course, if you go into things like piano, strings, or synth session, those might be limited to just the professional version of Studio One. So if you're trying to decide what version of Studio One you should get, if you're going to be heavy into instruments and plugins and doing more electronic type stuff, you may want to spring for the professional version of Presonus Studio One. You'll get a lot more presets, you'll get a lot more loops and samples and things like that. But for now, I'm just going to keep it under the artist instruments. So I have to choose from, I have bass, combinations, drum kits, effects, guitar, keyboard, percussion, strings, synth, vocals, and then winds and brass. I'm going to start things off. I believe I want to have some sort of pad sounds. That's going to give me some chord changes, something very specific. So I'm going to go with synths, and then basically I can just choose any of these I want. So as soon as I click them, it's going to load the sound in Presonus Studio One. Let's go to Big Pad. As soon as I click it, you can see a bunch of stuff shuffles around on the screen. And if I click any of these keys, the first thing you'll notice is that these instruments are crazy loud. So the global settings for Presence are right over here. I'm gonna take this volume knob and I'm gonna turn it down to at least maybe -10. That's going to make sure it's not blowing my headphones up like it just did earlier. So now if I click that same note, still pretty loud, but I can just change my headphone volume to adjust for that. So I like that sound. Here's some of the parameters you're going to want to familiarize yourself with. Really, I'm just clicking where it has the piano keys. I'm just clicking so I've got an idea of what the instrument sounds like. I'm not recording with my mouse at this point. But right in the middle of the screen, you have your filter. So if I want to turn the filter on, make sure you click where it says filter. If everything is bright and lit up, that means the filter is engaged. And right now, I want to change my filter to where this is rolling off a bunch of high end. So this is a high cut filter or a low pass filter. And if I move this cutoff knob, the further I move it to the left, the duller the sound is going to be. I'm removing all of that treble. So let's just take a listen now to that same note. Now it sounds like it's a lot further back. If I keep rolling this cutoff knob further to the left, I've now got a low pass filter set at 551 Hertz. Let's take a listen. Very ominous, okay? The benefits of a filter, especially if you're using a lot of different instruments or vocals, if you want something to be subtle in the mix, make use of some sort of high cut filter. You'll see that a lot on synthesizers as well. And then at the bottom, we have different basic effects. So if I want to add a reverb, I can click where it says reverb so that everything is lit up. I can change how much of that reverb is mixed in with the original signal. Right now it's set to about 38%. The size of the reverb, I can change it to where it's a 2-second reverb, and I can change the pre-delay, etc. You also have access to a delay. If you want to throw a delay on, just make sure you click and then go through all the different settings there. And then modulation. Modulation can be cool, especially if you want to use the flanger or the chorus. But for now, I'm just going to play with the reverb. Let's take a listen to that. Sounds good. If you click where it has effects B, this is like your second page. You're looking on the back side. And we've got this EQ. So one of the things about this pad is it's got a lot of low end. So I want to get rid of some of the boominess. I'm going to move this cutoff filter back up to about 2K. And then I'm going to engage the EQ. Make sure my EQ is on. And I'm going to take these low bands and I'm basically going to create a low shelf where I'm cutting off some of this boominess. There we go. So that's not as aggressive sounding of a pad. Now comes the fun stuff. So I'm going to leave this just like it is. I'm going to go to my timeline here. I'm going to go to about measure 4. And if I double click on measure 4, I'm going to create a MIDI region. Okay, this is 1 measure long. I can extend this out and let's do at least 4 measures. So here I've got a block. There's no sound on this. It's just a blue region for MIDI. And if I double click at the bottom of this blue block, it's going to open up the edit window. And as you can see, we have the piano keys on the left. Now's the fun part where I can draw in MIDI notes. So instead of me sitting here typing on a MIDI keyboard or playing the notes in real time, since I'm just using my mouse and keyboard, I can just double click on measure 4 down here in the edit window. Make sure your edit window is open if it wasn't already. I can scroll up and down. I can go to where it says C2. I'm going to double click and it's created what is essentially a 16th note on the downbeat of measure 4. But I don't have to leave it as a 16th note. I can click and drag this bar so that it goes all the way through measure 5. Okay, so in the edit window, you have a timeline. So I can zoom in and out simply by clicking and dragging right here. And I can click on this bar that's been created, this note, and if I hit the D key, I can duplicate. So now I've duplicated the note. I'm gonna go from C to F, okay? You just simply click and drag the notes around. One of the settings you may want to make use of is the snap function, so it snaps onto the grid whenever you're close enough, or you can just hit the N key to toggle that off and on. So here I've got 2 notes on Presence with this pad sound going from C to F. Before I hit play, I want to turn off the metronome, so I'm going to hit the C key. If the metronome icon is blue, you're going to be hearing a click track in your headphones. But if you're doing MIDI instruments and loop-based recording like this, I'm not having to do anything in real time, so I really don't need a metronome for the song. And I've got everything snapped to the grid, so my timing should be good. Let's take a listen now. Okay, that's it. If I go up here to the top of the screen, if I want to duplicate that audio region, I can just click anywhere in this box. And if I hit the D key, as you can see, it shifted it. So I want this to line up right on measure 8. So we're going from C to F, from C to F. I can combine these two MIDI regions. If I highlight them together, and I right click, and I want to merge the events. So now we've got one audio region going from measure 4 to measure 12. That's going from C to F. You don't have to keep it as simple as this. We can actually stack up some chords. So if I grab this C key, I hit the duplicate key, I can drag this up to the note G. So now instead of hearing just one note, we should hear 2 notes. Very neat. If you want to change the velocities of the note, if I select this G, as you can see, there's this white vertical line on the velocity tab. If I click and drag this down, I can make the G note a lighter velocity than what the C note is. So now if we take a listen. That's going to go for a more realistic sound. So one of the things with MIDI or virtual instruments is that a lot of times the velocities, when they're just pegged out at 100%, it can sound very fake because there's no dynamics. If you're playing something on a keyboard, it's very likely that the C and the G chord will be hit with the same sort of intensity. But that's where the benefit of MIDI comes in, is that you can manipulate the intensities of the different keystrokes simply by clicking where the bar is, dragging down the velocity. You can get some great dynamics. So now I'm just going to build out these different chords. I'm going to take this G note, I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to add a C chord on top of this F. I'm going to make this note an A, and then I'm going to go back to C. So now we've got chords for our pad sound. Let's take a listen to what we've got so far. This is a C and a G. This is an F and a C. This is a C and an A. This is an F and a C again. All right, sounds pretty good so far. Sounds like something you see on Dune. I want to add another instrument. So one of the things that can get you in trouble is if you keep changing your virtual instrument. I have a couple of different ways of doing this. So if you're really locked in, like you really like the sound of that pad, I can click anywhere in this audio region where I have these chords and I hit Control B on the keyboard. What it will do is it has bounced those MIDI notes into an audio track. So see now, instead of it being MIDI like this, now it looks like I've actually recorded the synthesizer. And if we take a listen to this new track that was created, if I hit the space bar, it sounds exactly the same as the MIDI. Benefits of this are if your computer is really weighed down with the processing, like it's just stuttering or it's having trouble creating the sounds, you probably need to bounce some of your MIDI tracks to audio tracks. As soon as I bounce this to a track, you can see now it's muted the original MIDI event. Then you can right click where it has presence and you can click disable track. When you disable the track, you're now freeing up that processing power that was bent on creating that virtual instrument. I'm gonna go back and enable this, and I'm gonna rename my track since I bounced it. I'm gonna call this one Pad Deep. All right, so here I've got my big pad that's been bounced down to a new audio track, which is great. That means I've freed up some processing power, and you would think you go back to Presence, and now we can just load a different preset, move on to the next instrument. I want to discourage you from going about it this way because yes, it's going to free up your processing power to bounce things to an audio track, but you may find yourself in a bind if you bounce to an audio track and then you try to go back and re-edit your previous pad. I'll show you what happens. So when you bounce to an audio track, now your MIDI is grayed out. If I toggle mute or hit Shift M, now I've got my MIDI track that I originally recorded the pad sound to. You'll recognize it with the notes below. Well, let's say I go back into Presence and I change from a big pad and I go to the strings folder and I load FM strings. Now, if I take a listen to that track with my original pad sound, if I hit play, you'll know that that doesn't sound like the pad that I had earlier. So every time you change the preset on Presence, it will change the sound of your MIDI track from before. Okay, this can get you in a tangled web of issues, so I'm going to show you a better way to go about it as long as your computer can handle it. So instead of changing the preset, I'm going to keep this one as big pad. I'm going to right click the track for this pad and I'm going to disable the track. Okay, so now I've got an audio track of the big pad. I'm going to go back to my instruments folder. I'm going to drag and drop a new track. And as you'll see, now we have Presence 1 and Presence 2, okay? Presence 1 has been disabled, so I don't have to worry about this affecting my processing power. But if I want to go back and edit the original MIDI from the big pad, I simply right-click and go to Enable Track. If I enable the track, I now have access to Presence 1, which is the pad, and Presence 2, which I can load things like the strings I was talking about earlier. Go to strings, FM strings. So now I've got FM strings on Presence 2, and I've got a big pad on Presence 1. Of course, this is going to put more strain on your computer, so what I recommend doing is bounce to an audio track whenever you can. Go back to the original instrument, disable the track, and keep going forward, okay? That way, anytime you need to edit a previously recorded MIDI instrument, like the big pad, if I need to change the chords, I can go back and just enable a previously disabled virtual instrument, okay? So I've got FM strings loaded. I want to add some MIDI notes to this. FM strings sounds very similar to the big pad, so I don't want to go too crazy, but I need to keep this thing relatively in the key of C. Again, that was too loud, so let's go to global volume. Turn it down, about -10. This one, I'm going to have it move every half note or so. So let's get some movement going on. I'm going to start on C. We'll go from C. Let's take a listen to what it's got going so far. Yeah, this is going to be kind of nuts sounding. So we're descending into madness here. Just a walk down the scale. Let's land on the F for a little bit. And then we'll go down to E. Again, I have no idea what I'm doing. We're just making this thing up. For right now, it kind of sounds like a Dune soundtrack, but let's just hit play and see what happens. All right, I like the sound of that. I am going to open this filter up and give myself another little rolled off sound. I don't want anything to poke through just yet. And I'm imagining this is going to have at least 15 to 20 tracks by the end of it, so I want to be careful. All right, I'm going to click the little descending passage we've got here. I'm going to duplicate it with the D key. And then I'm going to highlight this whole region. I want to group or merge the events. You can hit the G key if you'd like. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to Control B. I'm going to bounce this thing to a new track, adjust the volume a little bit. Let's take a listen to that. Nice. I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to right click this whatever Presence 2. I'm going to add a new instance of Presence. And go back to the artist instruments. Let's go to vocals. That'll be fun. Let's get some choir Oz. See what that sounds like. Yeah, this is, we're making a Dune track. I shouldn't have called this one Sweet Tea. I should have called it Sands of Dune or something. That sounds nuts. Let's play around with this. I'm gonna take that filter again. Rolled off too much. Now it doesn't sound like a choir. There we go. All right, so I'm doing the same thing. I'm just double clicking to create a new MIDI region. This one, I want it to be a little more sparse, so I'm gonna double click. If I've got the key selected, you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move down and then move back up with the up arrow. Let's create something that's a little bit more rhythmic. So let's do G to F. Okay, that's weird. Let's move it over. Good with that. No. If I select all of the notes together, I simply just selected them all and hit the D key. It'll actually duplicate and shift them to the next quarter note. I can click and drag these over. Take a listen to that. Okay, I actually like this little weird thing that's going on here, but what I want to do is let's go back to the reverb setting. So if I click this presence, open up the reverb, and let's just go really heavy on the reverb and take a listen. Add some delay, but not too much. Let's do a lot of feedback. I roll the mix knob down. Do some phaser. Phaser is always fun. Okay, I'm going to group these together with the G key. I'm going to Control B to bounce. So we've got a pad, FM strings, we've got a choir. We're just building this one as we go. Again, I'm going to right click and disable this track. I probably don't need to keep disabling them. My computer is pretty heavy loaded. Let's add some more stuff. It'd be fun. That's something that's just really out there. Ocarina. That makes me think of Zelda. Okay, let's see what that sounds like. All right, this one has got to be really fast because I am thinking about like Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. Let's nerd out with that for a little bit. See, doesn't sound natural, so we need to mess with some of these notes. If you want to change the time base of your region or whatever, up here just above the edit window under quantize, you can see it's, if I change it to 30-second note, now the grid is showing me more information. You can also add it having a triplet feel to it, so we might want to go with that with this ocarina. Seems like something that would have more of a triplet feel. So now if I lock it to this grid, we can go more based on a triplet. Okay, so the ocarina is getting a little squirrely. Let's take a listen to it. All right, it's time we add some percussion. So I'm going to keep it with Presence. I'll just drag and drop a new instance of Presence here. Go into Artist Instruments, and we need to go to Drum Kits. This one's going to be pretty heavy. Let's go with Gritty 909. It's probably going to be really loud. Really like that one. That's around C1. So you don't have to add like all the instruments on one track. So this is a drum kit, but I could just have, let me just add the kick drum, then add another instance of that Presence and just have a snare. But I think this one, the way the song's going, let's go to C1 and just add some kicks to this. All right, instead of it being right on the downbeat, I want to do something that's a little more dramatic. So I'll switch this back to 16th notes instead of being triplet based. Okay, so I'm duplicating that again. I need this to be further back. So this one is going to be on measure 9. Listen to that. Move this one further back. And just like the others, I'm gonna add a bunch of reverb here. Make this thing sound really cavernous, I guess. Song got real epic real fast. All right, here we go. I'm gonna add another instance of Presence, and let's go to Artist Instruments, Bass. Let's see, Bottom 101. What does that sound like? Ow, whoa, okay, way too loud. But I think it's in the right direction. So let's find a C. Wants to be like, it's so low. All right, and that one, let's see. Want to add one more instrument, and you pretty much get the gist of using Presence if you've been watching me up to this point. If I go to Artist Instruments, let's just add some strings. And I want these to be a lot more, let's do tremolo strings. That should be fun. I'll probably end up using the filter the same way I've been using before. I'm just going to draw in these chords here. Ah, still loud. Turn that down. Go back and draw in. What I want this to be is more of a sustained. This is going to give us some ease because it does sound really heavy so far. All right, so here we have, let's see, we ended up with how many instances? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 instances of Studio One Presence, and what we've ended up with, it just sounds like the lead character in whatever movie you're watching is dying, so it's pretty dramatic. But I hope you've gotten a lot from this video to see what Presence can do. And of course, a fun thing is all of these MIDI regions, like I was talking about earlier, you can take these and insert effects. So if you want to add an EQ plugin to any of this stuff, you can EQ it just like you would a real instrument. As you can see in the bottom left, the performance meter. If you're worried about your computer's processing power, just click where it says performance, and you should be able to see that my CPU is running at 2% right now. Make sure on your main bus you put some sort of limiter, so you can go with the Presonus Studio One limiter and adjust it so that the ceiling is probably at like -1. Just make sure you're not clipping, because again, these virtual instruments, they come in really hot. So I'm going to adjust the gain so that I'm right up at the top. And from there, if you want to export your song, just make sure you have the loop region selected. You can go to Song, Export, Mixdown. You can choose MP3 or WAV file, and then just click OK. But let's take a listen to the song. It does sound pretty epic, but I hope that's giving you some insight to Presence. You don't have to use it just like this. I really like when I have a guitar, drums, vocals, I've got a song, and you want to load something like an organ or a pad and blend it in with your real instruments. That's fine if you want to do so, but I hope you've gotten something from this video to help you out. We'll take one more listen to the song. Hope you hit the subscribe and like button to help support the channel. Visit me over at heychrisgreen.com, sign up for the newsletter, and I'll see you in the next video.